I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him. I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. And when I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? Partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out.
I refused to give my girlfriend my jacket and shoes after I insisted to her to bring one. I, 21 male, have a girlfriend, 25 female. We've been together for 9 months and this relationship is great. I'm a very chivalrous person, opening doors, walking by the road, giving her my jacket when she's cold, taking her out on dates and such. Recently, I have noticed that she picked up the habit of intentionally leaving her jacket behind and asking me for mine, and not packing ballet flats when we go out. Because of this, I always give her my jacket and shoes when we go out, so I'm cold and barefooted. I would have been carrying her instead, but I have back issues and putting any form of pressure on my back is not advised. I asked why she stopped bringing those along and she said that she can't find her ballet flats and that she keeps on forgetting her jacket. To avoid this happening again, I bought her a new pair of flats and kept them in my car. It's been raining the past few days, so the weather has been colder than usual. 2 days ago when we went on a date again, and before we left, I reminded her several times to pick up a jacket in case it starts raining. Just as we were about to leave, I asked her one more time to pick up a jacket and she said that she had it in the car. Fast forward to our date. We were taking a walk when she said that her heels were hurting her feet and she was feeling cold, so she wanted my jacket and shoes. Mind you, it rained a bit while we were on our date, so the grass was wet and muddy. I told her to wait for me on the bench, so I quickly grabbed her shoes and jacket from the car. She was hesitant and insisted that she wanted mine, but I told her that hers were in the car, so I'll just grab it so we can both be comfortable. Turns out she had no jacket in the car. I was obviously annoyed at this point, so I called her to come to the car and that we're going home. She was mad at me and said that I was petty for ending the date because of a common jacket. I told her that wasn't the issue, that it was the fact that she had lied about picking up a jacket. Yes, I would have been frustrated if it was a mistake again, but when I realized she did it on purpose, I refused to give in. So am I in the wrong here?
Am I wrong for not telling my parents that their daughter is dead? Well, that is kind of morbid, but okay. Long story short, 15 years ago, I received an anonymous letter in the mail that said I had a full sister my parents had in high school that no one told me about. The letter also gave me a home to start with for leads and said, don't ask your family for help. My mother thought the letter came from a half-cousin who was incredibly gossipy and apparently over the years asked multiple relatives about the baby, and everyone just told him it was none of his business. I think it came from a childhood friend whose family was active in that church. The envelope had a city postmark nowhere near where either lived, though. I still remember the last paragraph because it was so overly dramatic. Destroy this snow. The language may betray me. We all have known about this all this time. I confronted my parents, who were devastated that this finally reached me, but they were honest with me. It happened when they were both 16, and my grandparents forced my mother to go to a religious home until the baby was born. While there, she was mentally beaten down and degraded. The girls, all pregnant teens, were only allowed to go outside via a backyard with a high fence. My mother only saw the baby girl for a few seconds before Allison was taken away and she returned home and was told to never ever mention it to the family or anyone again. Eventually, my mom got pregnant with me again in college and was forced to drop out. There was a shotgun wedding. My parents are still together. Learning about this explained so much about the dynamics of my family, and my parents admitted that they stayed in the area hoping it'd be easier for my sister to find them one day if she wanted. But neither wanted to actively look for her. They said it was their daughter's decision if she wanted to search, and they asked me not to. But without telling them, I spent 5 very hard years searching for her only to find out that she died as a child. The paper trail was horrible. It's still a miracle that I was able to finally get as much information as I did. She has no death certificate. It broke me. Don't ever let anyone tell you you can't mourn someone you never met. My parents have never mentioned her again since the day I confronted them, and I mourned alone and kept her death to myself this past decade. But a few weeks ago, my mother said something unusual that makes me think she's finally ready to search for her daughter via the internet. As a side note, the only discussion my grandmother had when my mom returned was to ask if she had a photo of the baby. Of course, she wasn't allowed that. When I was small, my grandparents had these hanging connected frames in the house of all the grandkids, in age order, and the top frame was empty. I realized later this was my grandmother gaslighting my mom for a daughter and granddaughter she rejected when my mom needed support and love the most. And my poor mom had to see that frame every time she was over there. My parents' health is delicate and my dad is fighting cancer. I know learning about her death when they're in their 70s would be incredibly devastating. To me, it would be easier to just think that there's someone out there who's happy to be there, rather than learn she never had a chance to live. But now I'm torn. Am I the asshole for not telling them, even though they've never asked and I've never mentioned her in 15 years? Bro, what the fudge? Like what? Like, oh, that picture frame thing really pisses me off. Like, ugh, that's not gaslighting. That's just guilting your child. Damn. My 25 female, boyfriend 28 male says my boundary is controlling. Let me be the judge of that. My boyfriend says that my boundary of not wanting to be with someone who goes to strip clubs is controlling. Next, red flag. He is trying to gaslight you. That is not a controlling boundary. That is like a very reasonable. He's not willing to give up that lifestyle. Okay. I've explained to him several times that my ex of 3 years had multiple relations with several strippers, and as such, it is a hard limit. He said he is a grown man and he can do whatever he wants and doesn't have to follow the rules of someone else. Oh my God. I said, I agree, but you're absolutely allowed to do whatever you want, but I won't be in a relationship with someone who cannot put my feelings over seeing another woman naked and getting a lap dance. I told him this before things even got serious with us, and he said he didn't want to go to one anyways, so it was fine and he understood. Now, all of a sudden, I'm trying to control him? I don't think I am. I never said you're not allowed to go to a strip club. I said it was a boundary of mine, and if it is something he feels he needs to do, then we can just go our separate ways. It wasn't even a threat because we weren't even serious. He brought it up a few days ago that he wants to go for his friend's birthday. I reminded him of my boundary that he agreed to because we became exclusive, and he told me that his boundary was not to be with someone who controls him. I said, I'm not trying to control you, but if that's a boundary for you, that's fine and we can end things now. My boundary will not change. He replied that he doesn't want to end things, and I just reiterated that he can't go to a strip club and also have me. It's just a hard boundary I don't foresee myself ever going back on. I feel like he's trying to push me to throw my boundary out the window, but I know for a fact that I won't feel good about it. We've only been together for 6 months, so at this point, I really think it would be just less of a headache to cut things off. I care about him, but I'm not interested in being a cool girlfriend who pretends I'm totally fine with something I find extremely disrespectful. He thinks I'm being irrational. I think it's kind of messed up he's trying to push against something, again, I warned him about before agreeing to be my girlfriend. Thoughts?
Am I wrong for going on vacation without my husband? I asked if he bought the tickets again and he said no. We looked again and the prices were still high and he said he wasn't willing to spend that much money on them. He proceeded to ask how much money I would lose if I just canceled everything instead. He offered to have a nice staycation instead, and I told him I was not willing to cancel everything because I spent so much time planning it. So we argued and didn't come to a conclusion, and I wound up buying one ticket for myself. Then when Saturday came, I told him I was still going. He acted all surprised that I didn't want to stay home with him. I'm in New Orleans now, and he's blowing up my phone saying I'm wrong for leaving him. He was trying to get a ticket to come too, but I told him if he came, he's getting his own hotel room. Because now, this is my vacation away from him. Am I wrong? Top comment says, I don't know if he deliberately sabotaged the trip or just didn't care enough to follow through his tiny piece of things.